Well, we may be a year away from the $6 million man. I'm Scott Ott, and this is Bill Whittle Now, brought to you by the members at BillWhittle.com. Bill, our buddy Elon Musk of Tesla and SpaceX and solar roofing material fame, and who knows, boring tunneling.
Hyperloop.
The Hyperloop, yes, all of that kind of stuff. This is something he's been working on for a while, but a couple of British publications are touting the fact that he's now claiming that within about a year, he should be able to accomplish through a company called Neuralink, an implant that should be able to help humans who perhaps have been paralyzed or have other debilitating brain conditions to resume some of their normal activities, or at least to advance beyond where they can now. And Bill, it was fascinating. I watched a presentation that Mr. Musk did last year on this topic after hearing this news. And it just struck me, Bill, that here's a guy who's standing up there very seriously saying, we've got this tiny little device that we're going to implant and we need to make it scalable. So we don't want neurosurgeons to have to do this. It's going to be done by a robot, and it's going to be something akin to LASIK surgery so that you can do it at scale and many, many people can get this. First of all, just in general, the idea that something we saw on TV as fantasy, we're now getting to the point where we're saying, Oscar Goldman, phone your office.
For most of you watching this show, Oscar Goldman was a fictional character played on a TV show called The $6 Million Man, ... et cetera, bionic woman, Lindsay Wagner. Obviously, Musk is a genius. I just wish he'd spend a little more time at work and not so much time, goofing off. But I think actually the real breakthrough genius of Musk is not that he wants to go to Mars, but that he wants everybody to go to Mars. And it's not that he wants to go to Mars, but he wants it to be profitable to go to Mars. And this is a fundamental difference in worldview. The idea that what you would have to build in order to put you or a mission to Mars together is very different than what you would have to build if you wanted to send hundreds or thousands or millions of people to Mars at relatively low cost. And this just seems like another example of that, where Elon Musk has this almost unique ability to see something that's past the goal. It's like, what's the goal? Well, the goal is to land on Mars. Yeah, but what's the real goal? So what? We do that, then what? We landed on the moon 50 years ago. What's the goal? Well, I guess the goal is to be able to live on other planets. Okay, so let's worry about that. How are we going to do that? That ability to see past the impossible into the transpossible, is what really makes this guy unique, I think. And I have no doubt that he'll pull it off.
Applied to this case, what you're saying, I think, is really germane, because it's like the average person would say, okay, so what could a neurosurgeon do to help somebody regain partial use of their limbs, for example? And even the most advanced devices that are currently approved for medical use, which his device is, of course, not at this point. But even the most advanced devices, he says, his new Neuralink device, which they're calling N1, sexy name, will actually be like 1,000 times better than whatever's already in production. And that being able to look at that and see, look, if only a handful of people can have this because it's tremendously expensive and must be done by a Dr. Ben Carson type specialist, then it's not going to impact the world. But if we could have a robot that could do this, and we could multiply that over and over, so essentially you could walk into that little store that's right between the donut shop and the dentist in your local strip mall and have this chip implanted. And yes, I know we're going to hear it when I say the term chip implanted, but that is what really makes him peculiar.
Elon Musk, just to go back to the point I made earlier, it's kind of a nice way to think about it. It takes somebody like Elon Musk to realize that the $600 man is more valuable than the $6 million man. If you think about it, that's really the genius of Elon Musk. You could certainly, the reason that the series that came out in the 70s about a guy who was bionically augmented, he could control artificial limbs and stuff. He could lift cars, even though he still had a human skeleton and legs, and put that aside.
Yeah, that was the mystery right there.
My mechanical arm just ripped itself out of my human socket. And that hurt. But it really is I think a really good way to think about it. A $6 million man project is a project where you dedicate all of your resources to finding how to do the neural connection so that an advanced team of scientists can make a one-off device that will allow people to regain either control of their own limbs or biological type control over artificial limbs. That's a $6 million man project, and that's a far star. And Musk understands, yeah, but if a $6 million man is worth doing, just think about how much better a $600 man would be, or a $60 man, or a $6 man. That's genius. It really is. It's genius. And you know why it's genius, I think, Scott, is because I'm not saying that Elon Musk doesn't have an ego, but you do see in that kind of thinking a lack of ego. In other words, if he were building SpaceX so that Elon Musk could go to Mars, they'd be building one kind of company and one kind of vehicle. But they're not. They're building it so that anyone, but lots of people can go to Mars. Likewise, if he were building this for himself or whatever, he'd be going down a certain pathway, but he's not. And what that's saying is, he's got the vision, but he's also taken the ego out of it. He's not like, I'm the man who delivered the $6 million man. It's like, no, I want to be the guy who delivered the $60 man. I want to be the guy who helped put together a device that freed millions of people, not just the one that's on TV and that I get all the accolades for and I made the big breakthrough for. It's a profound way of thinking. He's the most remarkable guy in the world, I think, without question. And I know a lot of people have some problems with him. I guess if you study anybody's life, you're going to have some problems with that. But to be as successful as he was in SpaceX, that alone would immortalize him. And to be able to do this with Tesla and Hyperloop and now this and others, he is the classic American immigrant success story. A guy who did not live in America, who had all of these dreams, had the will and the intelligence and the fortitude and the persistence. That's the big one, the persistence to succeed, and realize the only place he would ever be able to do this was America. So he came to America, and he just kept going until he got it right. Persistence is 99% of it, and he's astonishing man.
Now, of course, there's a plentiful supply of scientists and neurosurgeons and others who say that his plan really isn't going to play out the way he's advertising it. In fact, Musk himself has talked about how, once you're able to do this, to implant this device and to have it wired into the brain's system of neurotransmitters, that you could deal with a lot of different brain conditions. And he lists things like autism and schizophrenia and other kinds of conditions. Now, his critics will say that his best shot really is helping to animate robotic limbs, for example, or to create eyesight where there was none by essentially transmitting signals from, in effect, a camera directly into the brain, and being able, the idea of being able to imagine something and then make it happen with your hand by just thinking and making it so. So they acknowledge that he's got some potential here, but not as big as he says. He's actually invented this thing. I mean, his people have invented this thing that has little filaments that are so small that they're actually about the same size as the dendrites on the neurons. And this robot implants them and connects like 100 of these tiny little, things that are about 20% the size of a human hair into these dendrites. So this is not something that's at the theoretical phase. And when he released he did a presentation last year in 2019 about this, and he started off essentially by saying, frankly, most of the purpose of this presentation is a recruiting tool. He's saying, look, I want to lay this out here. I'm going to show you what we're doing. I'm going to show you how we're doing it. And I'm going to show you why we're doing it. And the whole purpose of this is not to impress the investors. The whole purpose of this is so that great people will burn to work for this organization.
Whenever you get an existing power structure in science or engineering saying that either something can't, well, this is one of Arthur C. Clarke's laws. If a noted expert says that something is possible, it almost certainly isn't. If he says it's certainly impossible, then it's certainly almost certainly possible. You run into people who have been so institutionalized that when somebody comes up with something new and it's undeniable, like SpaceX's rocket landing on its own exhaust, that's undeniable, it's real. It exploded a bunch and people were laughing at it, then it stopped exploding and now it's real. So when you show something that revolutionary to people who are in the business, so to speak, since they can no longer deny the feasibility of it, what their natural reaction is to do is to say, well, okay, but you're thinking way too big. You know, if you're going to be successful, you got to concentrate on this narrow little thing because the narrow little thing is easier. But it's actually, I don't think it is. And I think with my limited science background, I think basically what Musk understands that, and these experts that you just quoted don't understand, is that the problem is not going from the brain to a mechanical camera, or from the brain to a mechanical arm, or from the brain to a mechanical storage device or anything. That's not the problem. The problem is going from biology to electronics. And if you can cross that bridge, then all of these things are possible. So instead of building a vision bridge, or an arm bridge, or any of these other things, Musk is looking at this as, no. These things will happen instantaneously once we understand how to cross this distance, once we understand how to make electronics and chemical neurons in the human nervous system talk to each other. Then after that, it's just, everything's free. And he's absolutely right. And it's so interesting from a historical point of view, and on some level it's sad, and on another level it's encouraging to watch these existing dinosaurs, like Boeing, for example, who simply mocked him to the rafters, and now is incapable of doing what he's doing. They can't do it. They've got 100 times, hundreds if not thousands probably of times his staff, and a lot more money than he's got, and they can't do what he's doing because they're too big, they're too slow, they're too fossilized, they're too expensive, and they're too careful. And he's not.
It's funny, when I watched the presentation video, it started out before he walked out on the stage, and you know, it's so great. He comes out casually dressed. He kind of stutters a lot when he talks, and he just seems so unprepossessing in his presentation. But he ran this video, and I'm watching this video, and I'm going, holy cow, what is that? A bunch of sort of like stock photography that they've staged and everything. The first thing out of his mouth when he steps on the stage is he says, I just want to let you know that that was actual footage from Neuralink in our facilities. That was not stock photos.
You know what would be great? Just to tie this up with the whole $6 million man thing, for those of you that didn't see the show, it was an extremely cheesy show. Basically, they would occasionally show a real bad-looking like plaster arm open up, and you'd see like rods and electronics in there and stuff. But mostly it was Lee Majors out there running in slow motion.
Yeah.
And he's not running faster than he can. He's actually running slower. And the way they sold it was this sound effect. Anybody who ever saw the show or saw the Bionic Woman, they know the sound effect. It's so when Musk finally gets this thing perfected, I think what he ought to do is he ought to just reach down on a table and just go, just like that, you know? That'd be awesome.
Well, he seems to really have a way of grasping the challenges. For example, one of the things he said was, I want this thing to last as long as a human does, if possible, because we don't want to have to keep opening people up every couple of years and taking it out. And it's only a tiny incision to get it in there, but threading all those little dendrites together is kind of a challenge. And he said, and it can't run very hot because the brain is very sensitive to heat, so it's got to be a low voltage device. And I don't want wires hanging out of somebody's head. I mean, if you actually have one of these, nobody should even know it. So we have to make it rechargeable without having any visible external parts. And, oh, by the way, we need to have Bluetooth so it can connect with your iPhone, so you can run the thing off an app or run your iPhone off your brain, as it would be. And so he just kind of thinks through all of these little things. Oh, and finally, when you have brain surgery, they kind of have to clamp your head in place, and they shave your entire head for the most part. And we'd like to be able to do this with a local anesthetic on an office visit.
He sees the future. He sees what's beyond the target. And that is, as I said, it's an astonishing ability. And to say, yeah, we don't want to have people doing this every 2 years, 10 years, 15 years. That's somebody else that could be having the procedure done. Elon Musk, I think, the genius of him is that he understands on a level that virtually no other engineer does understand. Burt Rutten's about the only other example I can think of personally who understands the vision better than as much as the technical problem. But Elon Musk understands this fundamental thing that so many people like Boeing and other companies don't understand. And that is that an engineer will look at something, look at a problem, and engineers are born to solve problems. And they think that the solving of the problem is the objective, but it's not. The humanity is the objective. The human benefit is the objective. It's not the device. That's what engineers think. If I can come up with this device, I've done my job. Musk says, no, the device is not the solution. The solution is people being able to get on with their lives. The device is a way of getting there. And I guarantee you, Scott, that the Mark II version of this thing is going to be powered by the person's own body heat. Guarantee it.
Well, and he's going beyond just dealing with so-called flaws in the human body. The next step is to create what he calls a tertiary layer of digital superintelligence. And by tertiary, he's talking about the brain kind of in sectors, the limbic, the cortex, and then this sort of, I'll call bionic. He doesn't refer to it that way. But basically, he said the limbic and the cortex, even though the cortex is sort of massively more intelligent, so to speak, than the limbic system, they somehow work in harmony. And so his ultimate dream is to make this digital layer to be able to work in harmony with the limbic and the cortex so that people can be massively more intelligent and make better decisions than they otherwise might have because they've got the bandwidth, so to speak, or the RAM, or whatever you want to call it, to do so.
That could be an actual game changer. We actually have 3 brains. I learned this from Carl Sagan. One built on top of the other. We have the R complex, which is the reptilian brain that's responsible for things like aggression, fear, violence. On top of that is the limbic system that reptiles don't have, but mammals do, and that's responsible for emotions and that kind of thing. And on top of that is the cortex, which is there for reasoning. The ability to be able to cross that bridge that I talked about means that instead of me having to go to the internet and search for something, I just think about it and I get it. You do have to start asking yourself some serious questions, though. If the tech giants that are filtering the information that I'm able to get on a computer terminal continue to stay in this line of work, it makes you wonder that if he's talking about augmenting thinking by having access to things that are outside of the biological body, then you have to start asking some questions about who's keeping those assets and how they're dealing with them.
Yeah, he does mention in one of his presentations, and I'll end with this, that you got to make sure that whatever version of the software you have in the App Store doesn't have any glitches in it. Ladies and gentlemen, we are...
Update your drivers.
We have serious conversations here on Bill Whittle now much of the time, but sometimes we just like to revel in the innovation and creativity and just the magnificence of the age into which we were born. We're grateful for that. We're grateful for the members at BillWhittle.com who made it possible for us to have these kind of conversations and who enjoy them along with us. They also actually publish their own blog at BillWhittle.com, which you can't see unless you become a member. So we invite you to do so by going to BillWhittle.com and clicking that big green Become a Member link. For Bill Whittle... A man barely alive. For Bill Whittle, I'm Scott Hunt. Thank you very much for watching.
We can make him better.
We can rebuild him. We have the technology.